Thumbs up? Thumbs up for an intro for the Road to
Generally
Stage.
speaking, that means good things.
Episode 63.
Proceed
Can you believe that?
with caution.
Yes.
Speaking of any caution flags while you're out with your F1
Oh,
excursion?
yeah. There's some really good. Yeah, we got a safety car. It was money. Yeah, really nice.
Interesting. And safety car works the same as a pace car in
No
NASCAR?
idea. No idea.
Okay.
What's a pace car do?
Well, when there's a flag, the pace car comes out and keeps everybody in line until the race resumes again.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Same thing.
Okay.
Same thing. I wonder why it's called. I wonder what the difference. Why one is called the other? Just because NASCAR is lame and boring.
That is actually something pretty interesting to look into because they're doing the same thing.
Yeah. Interesting. No, it was pretty cool. We had a great shot at the Canadian Grand Prix a couple weeks ago of the safety car coming down a long straight. Like all the cars. That was the angle we had for the weekend. But it was kind of cool when you'd see the safety car come and then just a huge parade of F1 cars behind it, just getting antsy to ramp up the speed.
How fast do you think they're going when they come out of safety?
I don't remember what because they have to limit their speed to a certain amount. I don't remember what it is, but they get antsy about it because it's fucking with your tire temperatures quite a bit, right?
Right.
So, yeah, all that sort of engineering science stuff that I'm slowly starting to absorb more of year after year.
That you don't think of, but it just totally makes sense.
Yeah. So, I was in Montreal a week and a half ago for the Canadian Grand Prix, and it was magical and just a really cool thing. I was hanging out with Pete Van Helvoort, who we had on a previous episode of The Road to the Stage. He was in town playing with the Glorious Sons in Calgary last weekend. And he's also an F1 fan. He was asking about it. It's like at the end of the day, it is kind of like a music festival. You're paying similar prices to a full weekend. You've got 3-day access to a number of different motorsport things.
Are you in the same spot for all 3 days?
Yep. Yeah. But you can also walk around, right? Like it's I forget how many kilometers the track was, but you can do lots and lots of roaming. And they had like a Monster Energy section where they were doing motocross tricks and shit. And
I was just gonna say, and what's the crowd? Is it more like, is it a family event? Is it like a, party central?
It's pretty, there's a lot of partying going on.
Yeah.
We were in the beer area for a while. I mean, you can buy beer everywhere. There is a specific family grandstand. I'm not sure what that means. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's like, hey, if you're bringing the family, this is where you should go.
You know what? It's, I think, becoming more and more of a thing. When we saw Jack White in Vancouver, we ended up, unbeknownst to us, the tickets that we bought were in a alcohol-free section.
Oh, okay.
And when we saw the signs, we're like, oh, well, that just must be for hockey games or something.
Yeah.
No. It's for all events. It's an alcohol-free section. And then I was at Commonwealth Stadium this weekend.
Right, yeah.
There's an alcohol-free section there as well.
Similar to my experience at Mac Hall the other day, which was pretty wild. I haven't been to Mac Hall at the University of Calgary in some time.
The back of the floor is the beer area, right?
No, the front.
Oh, the front now.
Oh, sorry, the back of the floor is the beer area.
Okay.
Yeah. They fence off the back half of
the
the floor, basically. And it was so weird because I haven't been to Mac Hall in a long time. I parked in the parking lot I usually park at, which is just a straight walk to the front doors of Mac Hall.
University of Calgary, for anybody that doesn't know.
All under construction.
Oh.
So I'm already 10 minutes late. So I'm like, what the fuck? Where do I go? And I'm just following yellow fencing, doing like a complete half circle to get to the back door of Mac Hall, which is the smoking section. And I get there and there's a couple guys having a smoke and I'm like, where do I go? How do I get in? They're like, just come in here. So I just walked in the back door.
They let you in. Okay.
They didn't let me in. I just walked in.
Oh, you just went in.
It wasn't gated.
Oh, like no ticket? No.
I walked into the back door, the smoker's pit, with no ticket to Mac Hall. And then I'm like, okay, well, obviously I'm going to go and check myself in because I was on the list. And I didn't have to. I could have, like, the smoker's pit, you walk in and there's the floor on your left.
Okay, well, there you
go.
There's a heads
Show
up.
up a few minutes late to a show at Mac Hall and you get in for free.
It works out well.
So we can catch up more on that later, but we do have someone in our waiting room.
Oh, the waiting room is full. The lobby.
Waiting to see our friends here.
At Sawback Brewing Company, Go Services Inc., Bose Bar and Stage, huge support of the Road to Stage.
And our home, Communal Creative Studios, which feels like it's been a while since we were back here.
Honestly, it does seem kind of weird.
That's been happening lately. All right, who's our guest? Keegan Powell. Let's get him in here.
Admit one.
Admit the guest.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Goddamn right.
Can you hear us?
Okay, yeah, I can hear you guys.
Thank you, tech support.
Thank you, Kelly.
Cut me out.
Thank you, Dave.
Hey, Keegan.
Sorry, guys. How you guys doing?
Good. Real good. I actually, when you were connecting to the call, I had I realized that this is not the first Zoom call that Keegan and I have been in together.
Is that a fact?
It is a fact. He probably doesn't even know it.
What's the other one?
Pete did a solo side door show last year, and
right.
My girlfriend and I set up for the show like 5-10 minutes before it's supposed to start, and I remember in the chat you said something like, "What's up, honey buns?" I think you typed
that was her.
And I remember my girlfriend being like, do you think he knows that it's we didn't know who you were at the time, but it was a really funny moment.
That's incredible, man. So it's not the first time.
No, it's not, but after a few tries, we're here. We've got you here in virtually in Communal Creative Studios here in Red Deer, Alberta. What's going on?
Oh, not too much, guys. Truth be told, I know we're probably going to talk a bit about the album that I just put out, but I've been working so hard on this other album that's basically already done.
That's exciting. I love that.
So that's been the last 2 weeks, and I really just took the weekend off that just passed just to kind of get my headphones off my head, but it sounded really good. I mean, it's funny because a track like the Wild Card, which was the 4th single I think I put out on this record, I thought that was going to be for the second record.
Oh wow,
when I wrote it. And I thought, oh, this is cool. This is like an evolution in the sound. And I was like, yeah, the second record will be called The Wild Card, and it'll be like the first track. But just because of the way that things went, rather, we just rolled out singles so slowly that the second album is now that the first album is out, I can finally actually work on the second album.
That's
so
exciting.
I've just been doing that. I've just been lost in the sauce, as they say.
At home, or are you in the studio?
I have a home studio now. I just bought a reel-to-reel 8-track mixing machine.
Oh wow!
So generally, I mean, so Previous Pain, the record I just put out, that record was done with all my engineer friends. No, I mean, I only worked with 2 really, but on the record that I'm working on right now, the second record, I'm not all engineering it myself, but it's the first time I've actually taken the initiative to engineer myself a large portion of the record. So it's been just like a huge learning curve. But I'm going to take some time off. We're going to mix it at the end of summer, and then we're going to get back into show mode now. I have no manager, so I can kind of do whatever the hell I want.
Tip. That's a hot tip for any future upcoming bands.
And what if
seriously,
without a manager, is it like say yes to everything? Like just do what you feel like doing, or how do you vet things?
I certainly have people who advise me. But it's a lot of it is making your own plans. And, with this record that I'm working on now, I had a rush of songs come in last summer. And I feel like if the situation was different, it would have been a lot more politicized. But essentially, as soon as those songs came in, I called up my friend. I said, we got to record these now. Like these got to get down now. And so we did 7 songs, and I think in October. And then I did another 7 last week or 2 weeks ago. The last 2 weeks, it's such a blur. But to answer your question, it's a lot of making your own plans, which is very liberating. You don't have to ask permission. You really shouldn't have to do that as an artist anyway.
So when you say that those songs, you felt some urgency in making those songs at a time where they were more relevant politically last summer, is that what you're saying?
Oh, I wasn't talking about it in the political sense. I was talking about like in the politics of industry.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. You're able to do what you want. You're not worried about, like, I was curious. So the Wild Card was your 4th single, and from what I understand, Previous Pain has been around for a long time, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's been in my mind since 2019,
right? Probably
around the spring of 2019, where it's like, okay, this is what the album's going to be called, and Rock and Roll Kind of Night, Hang on My House, and There's a Mountain are going to be on it, because these songs just came to me, and this sounds like a vibe, and this all sounds like they all kind of sound like one song, at least to me at the time they did. And let's go from there. And I wrote so many songs, and there are also so many songs that were left off of the record, which, to give you guys the exclusive, we'll be putting out some of that stuff in August.
Nice.
At the end of August. But Yeah, it's such a, I mean, there are pros and cons to obviously working with someone who like a traditional kind of manager, but honestly, man, like my friends and, you know, my partner and the people around me, those are the people who I trust the most. So if I need advice, I'll go to them first.
Well, and I was chatting, I was hanging out with Pete Van Helvoort on Friday night in Calgary.
Oh yeah. Nice.
And he had mentioned it before, but I wasn't fully aware of your involvement with Teenage Kicks back in the day. So, you know, you've been doing this for a long time, and yeah, like you said, you've got lots of friends in the industry who've experienced all sorts of ups and downs, right?
Well, Peter's like my, I mean, yeah, I have a crazy history with Peter. Like I remember in high school, I would have been in grade 9, and he had a band called Cain and Abel at the time. Do you remember Cain and Abel?
Yeah, that's yeah, it's that one. Fuck, I'm blanking on the record. I think it was the last record they did. Is one of my favorites ever. It's just so beautiful. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So at the time, my friend who still works in the industry, a very successful local producer, Derek Hoffman. I went to high school with Derek, and I remember this moment driving around with Derek, and I really looked up to Derek's band at the time. They were like basically the Beatles in my mind. And he goes, one day he goes, dude, you got to check out this band called Cain and Abel. And it was like, if Derek's telling me to check this thing, I was like, I got to check it out. And he puts it in, and I was like, wow, this is like essentially kind of ahead of its time. But so to me, Pete was like a mythical figure. And then when my band moved down to the city, and my high school band moved down to the city in 2012, we somehow became aware of Teenage Kicks, and someone turned them on to us. And at the time, I was transitioning more into like a rock thing, and really just finding my favorite bands for the first time. Discovered, I feel like in 1 month, the Pixies, the Velvet Underground, and like Nirvana. And I might have been 2011. And obviously from there, like the lineage of bands that you can discover after that is essentially endless.
Yeah.
And that kind of music informed my relationship, I feel like, in a kind of backhanded way with Pete, because when I heard Pete's band, I was like, oh, this guy's kind of drawing from the same source as these other bands. And we thought, my high school band who moved down to the city, we thought, man, we got to get in touch with this guy, because we just got to know him. We got to record with him. Let's see if he'll record us. And he did. We thought, you know, like we saw him play too. I think the show was oddly enough with a band called Treble Charger. Do you remember Treble Charger?
Yeah.
So it was like Canadian Music Week 2012, and there was like Teenage Kicks and Treble Charger, and we were like, man, we got to go see this show. And we snuck into the show, and we saw them, and we were like, yeah, we just kind of had this epiphany. We're like, that's the type of band we should be. We should be like just like a straight ahead rock band that just plays great songs. That is the gimmick. Like the gimmick is they have great songs. And then fast forward a couple months, we're in Pete's basement, and then we record a couple of songs with my band, and Pete's basement is so sweaty and like murky and just like, it's like, what's it called in Matilda? Like the chokey. It was like the chokey in Matilda. You know what I mean? Just like,
yeah.
It just seemed like this ominous, ethereal place. And we also thought at the time Pete looked like a member of the Grateful Dead. So we thought for sure he'd be like tripping on acid and all this shit when we went down there. And then we found that he was like the most straight-laced, hardest working person ever. And we were like, oh shit, like we got to bring the weed back up to the band. like this guy. Yeah. And, but so the recording session was actually super good. And Pete took me aside after the session, and he was like, hey man, I think your band is really good, but I think you're even better. And like, you should be in my band. And I was like, shit, man, like I was not expecting that, because I'm a huge, like I was a fan of Pete's. And so I had to make the decision that that band was kind of falling apart at the time. So I joined up with Pete, and
that's used as directed.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's used as directed. And from there, I honestly feel like being in Kicks for like that, I feel like honestly it was like 10 months. It was like the best education you can kind of get for being in a band, just because we did so many things. I mean, and I always say, if someone was filming that whole experience, it would have been like Anvil. It could have turned out like Anvil, the movie.
Yeah.
Like it could have been like, look how, like, not actually, I'm being facetious, but it's like, look at this amazing story and look what happened, and like, look at like the reality of being in a band. Because I mean, I remember having this moment when we first got down to LA with Teenage Kicks. And I guess if anyone's listening and doesn't know who Teenage Kicks is my first real professional band, where it was like, it really felt like do or die to me. And I remember when we got to the producer's house the first day, I was so inexperienced. I was like literally learning how to put pedals together. Like I couldn't even like figure out how to patch pedals together. And I was so nervous to ask Pete that, like, I was like, hey dude, how do you do this? Like, you can't ask how to hook up your pedals when you're on the floor of cutting a record. Like, it's crazy. Like the record was, you know, it was a lot of money, that record. Anyway, I figured it out in the moment, but my point is, like, it was probably the best education I could have had that year.
So do you wish you had to ask those? Like, that's great advice. Well, I always tell people, just ask, no matter how dumb the question is, just ask the question. Let's get it done right. Do you wish you had have asked the questions? Would it have been easier if you just had asked, or it was fine, you figured it out on your own, no harm, no foul?
Honestly, I feel like, and especially at that time, like, men are such poor communicators at time. Like, there was a lot of silence in that band. There was a lot of just like really the motto in that band was, which was what I loved. It was like, learn your shit and get out of the way and just do it properly. And if you can't do it, like, get out. And I thrived in that environment because I can actually come through. I just kind of seem aloof, but technical things like putting pedals together, I know now how to do it. At the time, I don't think I'd ever used pedals. And when I showed up to that band, it was like, oh, well, why are you playing with a fucking tuner? Like, that's crazy. Like, you know, because I just came from a different school of thought. But yeah, those are great times.
I did my first radio interview with Pete and Jeff. Oddly enough, they were in Calgary opening up for the Glorious Sons in 2012.
Around there, yeah.
13, something like that. It wouldn't have been 13, I don't think. But I just had them I was going to radio school in Calgary at SAIT.
Yeah.
Had them in. We talked for like an hour. And I think that LA trip was still pretty fresh.
Mm.
And Pete was very honest about what happened.
Yeah.
And
it's one of his best qualities.
It did not sound like it did not result in a, you know, he wasn't very happy with the product, right?
For sure.
Sounded like a mess. And I don't know how many details we need to get into, but I remember finishing the interview, blah, blah, blah. Nice to meet you guys. And then I'm going back to edit, and I'm like, God, like, can I even release this? Like, because that sounded like a dog shit experience at times.
Well, there was nothing incriminating. It was just a dog.
I mean,
okay, was there? Okay.
I don't know,
right.
but it was not the LA trip that I think a lot of bands would want.
The fairy tale,
right?
Not quite the fairy tale.
Yeah.
In a way, in a lot of ways, it was the fairy tale, though.
Yeah.
That's like the juxtaposition, because I was 20 years old, and like, for a kid, I remember being literally in a college program for I forget what the program is called, but I was in for 2 weeks. And in those 2 weeks is when I got the offer to join the band. And I was like, am I going to be in this program that is like going to tell you how to do things in theory, or should I just practically try and go do it? And I'd say for anyone, like, the best experience is actually getting your hands dirty and actually trying to do the thing. And in a situation like that, like, at the time, I think Pete was just like not hitting a stride, but he was in a particular phase where he was just so prolific. And that was also a great thing for me to witness, because he just basically woke up every day and wrote songs.
Yeah.
I thought that was crazy, like, at the time, right? Because when you're 20, you just like wake up and you like fuck off, basically. But Pete was waking up every day and like somehow could just stay at home and write songs and record them, and like every day seemed to have a new one. And that has permanently left a mark on me, where now Pete probably thinks I write way more songs than him. You know what I mean? So it's kind of interesting how that's turned out, but I'm sure he'll have another gold rush of songs coming soon.
Very possible. Well, so like you said, Previous Pain, it's been out for a month, 5 or 6 weeks now, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. Is it pure coincidence that your album starts with World Awake and Chastity's album starts with Real World?
I think it's a coincidence.
even though you had some involvement on his and vice versa, if I'm not mistaken.
I did. Yeah. It's purely coincidence. You know, in a lot of ways, I think we're similar. and a lot of ways we're different, but in a lot of ways we're similar. I think maybe thematically we were thinking along the same lines. What's a good way to tell the story somehow? I'm not sure. I'd have to ask him specifically, but it does happen to be coincidence.
They're both very solid album openers, though.
Agreed.
Very solid.
And I'm very happy in the songs we did together too. I think the songs we did together would have been, geez, I wish I had a record in front of me, but Smiling, Happy Face, and there's one more. But that, it's a great record. It's a wonderful record.
So, and you guys go back to, is it the Use as Directed days, Sharon Hall, if I'm not mistaken?
You've done your research, man. We have, yeah. Me and Brandon go back, I think probably till we met when we were 16.
Wow.
Or something like that. And I think the first show we ever played together was in Brampton, Ontario. And it was the funniest fucking show because we were working with this promoter and he was like, you guys are playing at the Powerade Center in Brampton, which is like a hockey arena. And we were like, shit, we're going to retire after this show. And we're 16. You know what I mean? Like, and we show up and it was like at the bar, in the back of the bar at the arena. And that basically like people were eating chicken wings and ignoring the music.
Yeah.
And Brandon and me were playing that show, but I don't think we had met until that night. And I think we just kind of connected from there. And then years later, he was in another project. He's a couple years older than me. So I always kind of see him as a bit of a head. And then at that time, he was very much like an inspiring force to me because he called me up one day. I remember vividly. I was probably 18 or 19. I just moved down to the city. I had like $5 in my pocket. And he calls me up. He's like, hey man, I just signed a development deal with like this major label. I want you to like try and write songs with me at this like office. And I thought that was fucking crazy. That like, you want me to come down and write songs for you? That's crazy. I'll be there. Like, and you're on this thing, like, sure. Like, you know, it just seems, I didn't know anything about the industry at the time. So I have no idea what actually songwriting entails from like a legality point of view. But that was really nothing to do with it, other than the fact that that was a great experience into that world and into co-writing, where it's like, oh, because in my mind, you have to be like, at that time, around 18 or 19, like if you weren't Noel Gallagher or like Kurt Cobain, it was like, who the fuck are you? Do you know what I mean? But then I realized that like, oh, people write songs from all these different kinds of angles and perspectives, and they don't actually have to do it all. They can, like, someone can have a vision and kind of go, okay, I need this here, I need this here, I'm going to take this from here. And that's totally cool. Because at the end of the day, I think people just love to listen to a great product. They don't actually, I mean, some people do. I'm sure die-hard music fans really want to know how the music is made. But I think the average music listener just wants that product in their ears, and they don't necessarily want to think about how mythical the process is or wasn't. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Pete still works in radio, and I worked for a number of years in radio, and I think that adds up. Right?
Totally does.
Yeah. As much as we would want people to know more context or have more context.
I'm trying to think of
that.
There was a line that I'd heard once about, especially when it kind of comes to radio listeners, about how people they're smarter than you think they are, but they care less than you think they do. So
that's
again, and that's exactly what I got into radio for, right? Is because I wanted to share all this love of music and how it's, and all the, I read the liner notes of everything I ever had, but I'm an anomaly.
And that's what they told me in day one of radio was, hey, if this is what you think you're getting into, then fuck off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So me and Brandon have known each other for a long, long time, and like over 10 years, probably like 15 years at this point. It's kind of crazy how time flies. But yeah, man, I mean, it's been an honor to be part of that project behind the scenes, because he's the champion of that band. And I've just been this very thing in the back that I've been lucky enough that, he'll be like, I have an album, and I'll go, great. Can you help me write it? I'll be like, geez, like, it's kind of an honor to be asked that. It's like a doctor delivering a baby or something.
Yeah.
It's like, because it's a permanent, music is such a permanent nature. The nature of music is so permanent. He could have asked anyone else,
And personal too, right? Like,
so personal. Yeah. Especially his music.
Well, I think even just, it seems like the two of you, again, so I did ask him a few weeks ago if, he had any little tidbits, and he mentioned a few. He brought up Sharon Hall, and
Sharon Hall.
use as directed.
Yeah.
He told me to ask you who taught you to play guitar.
Oh, I wonder if he knows that story, and that's why he asked. So, do you know the band Serial Joe?
Yeah.
So the guitarist, the Serial Joe, taught me how to play guitar when I was like 12, but I didn't know who he was. And then I looked him up after, and I was like, oh shit, this guy's a fucking rock star.
Where was this? Where did you grow up?
In this town called Aurora.
Right. Okay.
Which is like an hour and 10 minutes maybe. Leisurely drive north of Aurora, or north of Toronto rather. But truth be told, I only had 2 guitar lessons. He showed me a couple things, and he told me, you don't need any more lessons, like you're good to go. And I was like, okay. And then from there, I actually got, it's crazy you said the name music directed, but that music school literally made a band. They were like, okay, we're gonna get this student and this student and this student and this student and make a band. And that was used as directed. And that band was my elementary school band and my high school band. Wow. In fact, that band actually got into a major label office when we were. This all happened around the time I met Keith. So Users Directly got into a major label office, and we had an offer of a development deal, and they kind of just wanted to check us out as people, see like what these people are all about. And they're hearing a demo that essentially sounds like Marianas Trench or the All American Rejects or something. And we had just kind of started to find ourselves. Like I was saying, like I just found the Pixies and the Velvet Underground and marijuana. So it's like, it's like I was just finding myself, you know what I mean? And it was, and just doing things that you do at that age, and just getting wild. And we showed up to the office, and they were like, what's your deal? Like, what kind of band do you want to be? And I'm not going to say the band. I'll tell you guys off camera, but we set up a very popular band in Canada that is brilliant. They're amazing. We said, we want to be a band like this. And they were like, that band hasn't sold a record in 25 years, and literally like laughed out loud. And I remember our managers were just like, had hands in head, and we were just like, well, I don't know, I'm just telling the truth, brother. I want to have a career. I'm in this for the long haul. And we didn't get the deal. Right after that is when I joined Kicks. And funnily enough, that same label offered Teenage Kicks an amazing, crazy deal, in which Peter bravely turned down to have a more artistic freedom. So it's just so serendipitous.
Crazy, man. It sounds like that's such a dynamic beginning to current, right? Like, you were in a band created by a music school, which sounds like when I went to rock camp in Ontario in like grade 8. You know what I mean? Like, they just pair you together with.
But now,
hold on, you went to rock camp in Ontario?
IMC.
What is IMC? I went to a rock camp too. I wonder if.
Do you remember? Was it actually okay? So I went to rock camp one year, and then the next year it was just pure band camp. But it was on the same. It was the same camp, same summer camp. It was run by, I think the group was called IMC.
IMC. Was there like tons of cabins and like like everyone was sectioned off into vocalists and drummers and guitarists?
Yeah, and then you would. They would pair you. They would make a band, and most bands had 2 drummers because they had so many fucking kids. And the drummers would do clinics. We had clinics with oh my god. I'm blanking on names. One of them was kind of a real case who would like at one point put one of the kids in the corner, face into the corner, like, hey, this is your timeout for an hour. And like we were 15 years old, but and they. Okay,
we're gonna have to check if it's the same camp, because I feel like there were a couple of rock camps, but that rock camp, if we went to the same camp, I had such a good time there.
Oh, such a good time, such a good time. My band leader was a guy named Rob Lamoth.
Okay, dude, that sounds familiar.
And Stevie Salas was also there.
Okay, we went to the same camp. Yeah,
that's unbelievable. What year were you born, Keegan?
1992.
Okay, interesting. I'm 91. We're gonna have to talk about those.
Crazy.
Hey, we may have been campmates.
You guys could have been bandmates at some point.
I was. I remember we sang Blix. I did vocals, and I did a Ramones song. I did Blitzkrieg Bob. I sang Blitzkrieg Bob.
Okay.
Or Blitzkrieg Bob.
So every night we would have a show in the barn,
Yeah.
and the barn was above the snack bar. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I think so. It was
Same
like
place.
a barn. Yeah. Yeah. That's cool, man. What was your instrument?
It was drums.
Your drums. Nice, nice.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. It's such a small world.
Yeah, that's really funny.
It's reminiscent of an episode of The Simpsons. Simpsons did their rock camp the exact
Oh,
same way.
really?
Right? Yeah, yeah.
Really?
And I think Blitzkrieg Bop was a part of that episode too.
I think, yeah, it was
that's amazing.
basically like all the. I think you were guaranteed at least once a night to hear like the bog standard starter rock song,
Well,
whether it was
that's- so-
Blitzkrieg Bop or a Stones song or something
and
like
and
that.
what
yeah.
what age is this camp at? Like,
Oh, I mean,
Like grade 6 to grade 10 or something.
so this
like
is-
that. I don't know.
yeah.
this is pre you finding out about bands like Nirvana and the Pixies?
Absolutely.
Because I'm going to be upset then. Why weren't those bands involved in this rock camp?
Well, you know, the thing is, it's like at that time, I had such a good, my dad, who I didn't grow up with, he would come around like every 4 weeks for dinner, and he'd like pick me and my brothers up, and he'd be like, he would show me a new record every time. And he'd be like, I remember I was super into Green Day at the time, like American Idiot and all that stuff. It was like, if you didn't listen to Green Day, you can fuck off, kind of. Like, that was my attitude.
Yeah. This punk rock opera.
Yeah, exactly. Well, one of the first great rock shows I saw was Green Day at the Air Canada Center. That was an amazing show. And anyway, my dad would show up and he'd be like, here, check this out. And he would show me Cheap Trick. And I remember hearing Cheap Trick for the first time and like losing my fucking mind. Because it was, I remember thinking Green Day were cheats. I was like, these guys are just doing, like Cheap Trick was doing this like 30 years ago. And better, not arguably. They're both such good bands. But I remember hearing Off Wiedersehen and just kind of losing my mind. And then he would show me Genesis, and then he would show me Def Leppard, and then he would show me Sinead O'Connor. Like, so all these different, like
Pretty
Sinead
diverse,
O'Connor, Def Leppard. You have Genesis, Cheap Trick, and then he would show me like Glass Tiger. And I was like, what is like the lineage here? And I realized a good song is just a fucking good song. And so I've never been about genres. So I don't know what genre I am. Whenever someone goes, what genre, I just say rock, because it's like got guitars in it, and but I don't even know what the new record would be called. It's just becoming more and more genreless.
Yeah, I like.
And I think that's a theme overall. Like, again, we've talked about before, I grew up, quite a bit before you guys, and it was at that time everybody had their little niche that they fit into. You had the pop fans, you had the country fans, you had the rock fans, whereas I think through the 90s that really changed a ton, and now like I barely know anybody that sticks to one genre.
Yeah, it's very,
which is great.
Yeah, I think it's part of the evolutionary process of music. It's like, I think it's just a natural evolution. It's like we probably should have abandoned these ideas at a certain point, or not abandon them, but just refine them and check them out and see if they're still relevant in today's age. And to me, I would never sit down and be like, today I'm going to write a rock song. It just kind of just comes out. And I think it's a product of the subconscious mind too, because I can't erase those influences. Like I'm saying, of Def Leppard and Cheap Trick. I both love those bands. It's so funny. Like I remember wearing a Def Leppard t-shirt in Toronto when I was like 19, and someone goes, "Take that fucking shirt off, you pussy." And I was like, what? Like, sorry, that's bad. Probably let's beep that word out. But I realized that like, wow, like people are really divisive about bands.
Yeah.
Like they either love them, they either hate them, but it's usually not because of the music. It has something to do with like the feeling of the brand or something that can turn something. Music listeners they're hard to. Everyone's so different. Everyone has their own taste.
Well, I think especially when you're younger, there is like a form of elitism to it. Like I remember, I was listening to the Beatles a ton, right? Growing up, that was what my dad had on a lot. And because of that, I kind of didn't take a really close look at the Stones, because from my young, immature mind, they were enemies, right? They were rivals. And that was kind of the lore for a long time, right? Until a number of years ago, and you start to find out, no, they used to hang out and they helped each other out sometimes, blah blah blah, and there's no need for that kind of competitiveness. But once you get out of that, it's a beautiful, beautiful new world.
Yeah, and I get too, like, I know growing up, and I went through that phase of listening to all those bands, Quiet Riot, Motley Crue, and all that stuff, and then evolved into Judas Priest, Megadeth,
Right.
Anthrax, and then those other bands were shit because what I was listening to was heavier and louder,
Yeah.
and everything else was shit. So,
And it can always get heavier.
And it can always get heavier.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we're good.
Sorry, these are my girls' AirPods, and I'm not a Mac guy, so I'm just kind of like tripping out a bit. Okay.
So you would, like, when you said earlier, kind of when you were putting things together for one project about the gimmick that you wanted to have. So there is like kind of an idea of where you want to go. If you're writing songs now, like let's say tomorrow you have this fucking brilliant idea for a pop song. What do you do with it? Do you just forget it because it's a pop song? Do you flush out the idea and put it aside and wait for the right moment to come along for it?
You know, usually these days, if something comes to me, I just put it down. I don't try and deny it. I don't try and question it. Because I learned from a young age that the best songs are the product of some kind of flash of intuition you have. And if you don't jump on that intuition, it's like the way I analogize it is that, and it's been said before many times, but it's just a great analogy. It's like fishing. And if you catch one, you got to make a decision. Are you going to clean it and gut it and eat it right away? And which is kind of what I like to do with songs. Or are you going to turn it into taxidermy, where it's the idea of a fish? It's not a fish anymore. So sometimes you can pragmaticize your intuition so much that you just lose what was totally special about the song to begin with. So songs like, for instance, like Rock and Roll Kind of Night, or what's another good example? Hang on My House, or even There's a Mountain. These are all songs off the record. Even The Wild Card. So all those songs were written and recorded within like 2 weeks. I know some bands like to rehearse like every day for a year, and like on the 366th day they go and record. I would lose my fucking mind personally. A, because I just write too many songs, and B, there's just, life is too short.
Yeah.
And someone might hear what I'm saying and go to my Spotify and be like, well, you haven't released that much music. And I say, well, get ready. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot coming out. There's a lot of stuff coming out.
You know, and it's funny, I thought about it earlier when he talked about, politicizing different versions. But anyways, if you're going to talk politics and so things are changing so much. And I bet even with your own personal life, things change so much. And you sit on a song for a year and a half, you can be in a completely different space, or the world's in a completely different space than when you wrote it. So I like that idea. Get it down, get it out.
Just get it down. It's like I'm more and more seeing it as like a conceptual art. It's like you have the idea, you have to. It's like a knock on the door, and it's like you let it in, and then you just kind of treat them, or it's treating you, or the song is singing you. It's such a mystical process that I don't even like to talk about it, because I feel like it's listening to me, and it's like, don't talk about me.
Yeah.
But it's but to me, all of the songs off if I was to leave, the reason why I leave songs off records is because I believe they're missing maybe I pragmaticize the intuition too much, if that makes sense. Maybe I turn the fish into taxidermy, and it's not even alive anymore. It just looks like a fish. So songs can, you can have a great fucking song, but the recording can be such a different story.
Yeah.
The two have to be totally married together. And I think that's what some people don't realize, is how hard it is to get those two together. And in my experience, and everyone works differently, but in my experience, song comes to you, get it down, finish the songwriting, and just record it right away while it still feels excitable. I would also liken it to like rehearsing a conversation. Like the best conversations are usually just the ones that like happen. You know what I mean? If you were to like walk by someone and those people had rehearsed the conversation line by line, they would kind of seem like actors.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be like, there's something up with those people. Like they're a bit fishy. They're not acting like everyone else on the street. And sometimes I feel like that in music. I almost feel like when I'm hearing certain types of music, I feel like I am being thought about too much. Sometimes I want the artist to just do their thing as an artist. And if I like it, then I like it. And if I don't, I don't, and who cares either way? You know what I mean? It's like Joni Mitchell has so many songs. Do you think Joni cares that I don't like all of her songs? No.
Yeah.
But she does it because she's compelled. She's a compelled artist. And that's a beautiful thing, to be a compelled artist. So you should just go with your compulsions, I think, as an artist, and to a healthy degree, as much as you can.
So with that being said, and like you're talking about the bands that will record for 365 days and then hit the studio and bang it all out.
Yeah.
And then deal with whatever issues they may encounter there, I guess. Or
Which can work wonderfully.
Totally.
You know?
Or you can live more in the moment and deal with it in a much shorter time frame with a quicker turnaround. So with that method, and I mean, Rock and Roll Kind of Night you released like what, 2 years ago? Like that song's been out for a long fucking time, right?
Yeah, that was October 2020.
Right.
Yeah.
So now that the album's out, obviously you're happy with the album, but are you like do you regret anything that you did with Previous Pain? Are you missing something?
No, I don't. Definitely no regrets. But I think what the way I'll kind of backpedal into reversing any kind of so-called mistake I made is kind of just doing these releases, releasing songs that were initially I thought were for sure going to be on the record,
Right.
but for some reason or another got cut. Because it's like, say, you know, hypothetical song X exists, but then a song like The Wild Card and like Hang on My House come through, and it's like, okay, or not Hang on My House, that was one of the first songs, but a song like The Wild Card comes through and it's like, okay, this needs to go in and these need to become not the album anymore. So there were really 3 versions of the record, if truth be told. There was a version that was done in March 2020, there's a version that was done in like April 2021, and there was a version that was finally done in February of 2022. And that's the version that's it. And that's the version that's out. Because now that you guys are just kind of bringing me down memory lane, now that I think of it, in March of 2020, I remember thinking, well, now that the first album's done, I'm going to start writing the second. And you know what I mean? It's like, little that I fucking know, like I was really just continually writing the first.
Yeah.
But in that regard, that time was it was such an advantageous time in a way, in a fucked up way, where it was like, you know, I'm just going to put this out and see what happens, and put this out and see what happens, put this out. And it was just like, there felt like there was no commitment to having to put a record out because no one could tour or do anything. There was no excuse.
Rock and Roll Kind of Night. And again, like I think we both really like the record. It's fucking killer.
Thanks guys.
Rock and Roll Kind of Night. From what I don't pay attention to lyrics as much as I should. I'm more of a melody dude, but
nice.
It seems extra relevant now because I was informed the other day that it's actually about Elvis and the Colonel, right?
Absolutely inspired by them when I was. That's the thing. It's like, so that's a great thing to bring up and kind of like will clarify kind of the process of my songwriting at least. But so I remember writing that song, and really the whole thing kind of was there like right away. There was different lyrics, but the melody was the same, the chords were the same, but there were certain words. What happens sometimes is when it happens, like it'll come in like mumbles, and certain words will come out fully formed, but then you have to fill in the mumbles. And I remember there was an Elvis documentary that I had seen recently. I think that summer I was just really interested in his story, and just remember thinking, you know, I'm going to draw from this guy. And I was in Los Angeles at the time writing that song, and you know, it was like a mental mentor or something. Sometimes I'll just think about people in my mind, and I'll think about them almost meditating on me as I'm meditating on them, and it's like we're sourcing energy back and forth together. It's like a metaphysical thing, but that dripped onto the page for that tune, in which, you know, I didn't even really think about him after that song was written and done, but yeah.
It's heavily inspired in a way that I personally have never heard song inspiration coming from. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it was like he just had such a troubled life, and I think there was something like a snapping point where it's just like, you know, I've had enough of this shit, like whatever it is. It was like that feeling where, and I was also personalizing as well, where it's like, you know what, I'm gonna make this song like a fun song, but ultimately the song is about like that snapping point where you're like, I'm out.
Right.
It's done, baby. Like it's gonna be a good night tonight instead. Enough of the bad stuff. It's gonna be a rock and roll kind of night.
Well,
so it's kind of supposed to be like a positive kind of message.
I honestly like that Elvis movie is coming out, or is
Just came out this
just
weekend.
came out.
Yep.
Do you know much
Oh,
about that
nice.
story?
No, you know what's really funny, just as you're talking about all this as well, I don't know the Elvis story that well. And the reason goes back to what we talked about earlier. I grew up in a household that was very Beatles oriented, and I was a huge Beatles fan as a kid. And Elvis always got called the king. And I'm like, fuck that. John Lennon is the king. So I really never gave Elvis the time of day because I was so into that.
Well, apparently, if you see this movie, you get to watch Tom Hanks be a villain for maybe the first time in his life.
What I have heard, yes.
But I don't know
Interesting.
why. I don't know why.
Interesting.
So
Yeah, it'll be good. I'll check it out.
I also hear they don't cover the part where Forrest Gump teaches him all his dance moves. They forgot to include that in the. That's an important part.
I'm sorry, are you trying to tell me that Tom Hanks playing an older German gentleman taught Elvis his dance moves? Okay, I see.
There's connections all over.
Yeah, I definitely don't know much about the world of Elvis, but I suppose I am about to with that movie.
It does look phenomenal.
Yeah, it looks pretty wild.
Good.
I do look forward to watching that.
It looks pretty wild.
It looks very good.
I just wanted to go back to that moment, which sounded pretty important for you, of moving into the city.
Yeah.
Which, as someone who grew up in the GTA, I never got to. I went to high school in Oakville. Never actually got to live in the city, aside from growing up in elementary school. But I always wanted to. Maybe still someday I can. But I understand Dunn Ave was like part of that formative time for you, right? Is that the first place you moved to?
Yeah, that was the first street I would have lived on. At the time I just had nothing. I got kicked out of my home in Aurora, and then I moved to an industrial unit with these guys who are now still in the industry, still killing it. One, I was actually in a band called the Devil Wears Prada.
Yeah.
So one of those, my friend Kyle Cypress, I was living with my friend Kyle, and he plays guitar in the Devil Wears Prada now. And my friend Johnny Simon, I was living with those guys, and they had a recording studio there. And I lived with those guys for like 3 months, kind of in that same period of like Pixies, Nirvana, Smashing Pumpkins, fucking The Breeders, all that scene, discovering all that stuff for the first time. And then I eventually got kicked out of there because they were running like a real business in there. And they were like, you got to go. I was kind of like a squatter. They were like, you're really nice. But like, sometimes I would just show up with Timbits and be like, hey, you guys want any Timbits? And it's like, dude, we're trying to like put like there's like a stranger recording a guitar track. It's like, and then, so they were like, yeah, you got to go out of here. You got to leave. And from there, I went to Dunn Avenue and I lived in the basement of my father's house, where I basically just stayed in the basement that summer. I think that was like 2011. And I just remember like putting on Beatles records and just being so zen and just like calm and just listening and just taking everything in and then writing my own songs. And I have notebooks and notebooks and notebooks and notebooks of songs from that period, which I thought, man, it could be kind of cool to like reprise some of those songs at a certain point, at least lyrically. Mm-hmm. Maybe not. It'd be a kind of crazy project, but that was all undone. I have, and they're actually kind of good.
Okay, all right.
Like they're like, it's not like, it's pretty good. Like, yeah, we'll see. That would be a very interesting project. Maybe I'll do that down the line. But yeah, that was a great street and time. The very formative years. Like I remember there was a McDonald's nearby that place, and I would meet up with Brandon, and we would have coffees and cranberry orange muffins, and just I remember I don't know if this story, in my mind it's true, but I remember going to Brandon and being like, dude, do you know this band called the Smashing Pumpkins? Like, you got to check them out. You know what I mean? Like, and it was like 2012. It's like the mark of such a good band that like generations after. It's like the same thing that happened with like the Beatles in the 90s and stuff, right? Where everyone starts talking about these bands again as if they're cool. I don't know, because like, at least in a practical sense, but from the way that things have been historicized, it's like a lot of bands seem to have become cool again. Were cool again in the 90s that were maybe like initially shunned, or just because they're like a band like the Ramones, like who are like kind of shat on, even though the way it's not historicized that way. Like a band like the Ramones, it seems like, oh, like they're like these overnight successes that were like happen to be punks too, but the reality is they paved the way for so many other bands doing a similar thing. And they really got their due in the 90s when people like Kurt Cobain were like, yeah, the Ramones are the fucking shit. And then all of Nirvana's fans hears that and they go, oh, who's the Ramones? And the Ramones get like a new generation of fans.
Right.
And the same thing kind of happened with the Pumpkins, I feel like, where it's like, I was very much, do you guys know what Warped Tour is?
Yep.
So I was a Warped Tour kid. I went to like every Warped Tour from like 2006, 2007, 2008. That was like my time of Warped Tour. I was very into that scene. Not even so much musically, but just the community. I thought it was fascinating that there was such a good culture around this type of music that was not really radio mainstream music.
Yeah.
For the exception of a couple bands. But I remember a couple of years later moving down to the city and discovering the Pumpkins and being like, every band from that scene is just kind of trying to be the Pumpkins. They almost created like the blueprint for emo but I don't even know if emo was a term in 1991. Do you know what I mean? Or 1992, or when Siamese Dream came out. At least this is all my opinion, but I think of them as like the godfathers of like emo. When you think of a band like My Chemical Romance and the Pumpkins, or even a band like the Used and the Pumpkins, it's like, wow, all these are Taking Back Sunday. It's like there's a lot of, and like I didn't realize at the time, but all these bands were just trying to be grunge bands.
Yeah.
But they weren't marketed that way. They were marketed as emo bands, in which at the time emo bands were like given like a bad rap.
Totally. It was like almost like a satanic thing. I remember like just the thought, like growing up in the extremely white suburbs of Oakville, Ontario, just like the thought that this music is for sad kids and that's a bad thing. It's like, well, weren't you listening to The Cure? Huh?
Right?
Yeah.
Weren't you listening to the Smiths back in the day?
And the lineage continues. Like you could go from the Pumpkins to The Cure, and you know, you can just keep going down. But for someone, I guess, born in 92, it's a kind of a mind fuck where it's like, oh, because when you're 14, 15, you think the world revolves around you. But then you just get like a bit older and you realize, oh man, I know nothing. I got to start learning like right away. Like there's so much to learn, and I still feel like that today, especially with like books and more so now than music almost. But like there's just so much stuff to keep up to date with.
You touched on grabbing coffee and cranberry orange muffins with Brandon at downtown Toronto McDonald's.
It's just a solid muffin. They still have it too.
And
actually, I had one on the weekend actually.
Do you still get the Tim Hortons grilled bagel special?
The grilled bagel special, I think. So what a grilled bagel is it's very simple. You get a bagel, you say, so I'll pretend I'm in the drive-thru at Tim Hortons. I want a bagel grilled. And they're going to say, what is that? And you just tell them, you go, put the bagel on the panini press and just grill it. Like, don't think about it. Just do it. Put some butter on it, grill it. And I'll be at window number 2 in like 30 seconds. And they'll be very suspicious, but you just get in and out, and that's a grilled bagel.
And the reason why you guys discovered that is because the toasters were broken? Is that what I understand?
Yeah, it was probably that, or we probably just like trying to like make each other laugh. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just, you know, something so stupid. And but man, that's crazy. Talking about all these things, I'm like, wait, what? I'm trying to think like, wait, a grilled bagel. Oh yeah, okay. So like the winter of 2016. Like,
well, I'm definitely gonna try it though. I don't really eat at Tim's very often, but I'm gonna go.
And do they actually put the butter on it, or do they just chintz out and just stick the bagel? Because it's got to have the butter, I'm thinking.
I've never seen what goes on back there, but
it feels like it was on it. Yeah, okay.
It feels like it was on it. It feels like it was on. Another good one too. Don't want to get too off track. But going to Little Caesars. Do you guys have Little Caesars where you are?
Yeah.
Do you like the crazy bread?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Okay, so this is a good one. So you get the crazy bread, and you say, "Give me the bottle of garlic sauce." And what you do is they'll give you the bottle, and you just open up your crazy bread bag, and you just like the whole schnozzle of garlic sauce. You just go on the. If they say they don't have the bottle, they're lying. They should just readily give you the bottle of garlic sauce.
God,
sorry, I spilled this secret, Little Caesars, but It's just the way. Yeah.
They can handle it. Interesting.
I think so.
Well,
You'd
I
think
know
there'd
what
be,
I'm
like,
doing for
some
dinner.
Sanitary issues with that now, maybe. But
Maybe now. I mean, yeah, maybe now. But yeah.
Definitely, there's definitely sanitary issues. You got it's a huge risk.
But it's worth it. It's
in
worth
which
it.
case now you just say, hey, where's the bottle? We can't give you the bottle. Well, just take the bottle, open the bag, dump it in, and we'll call it a day.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, that's okay. All right, so we're
did
gonna
not
try grilled bagels, and we're gonna try garlic sauce
I did
covered
not expect
crazy bread.
to get Timmy's and Little Caesars hacks out of this.
Yeah, you got
talk
any other
today.
fast food hacks?
Sorry, you guys
menu
are dealing
stuff?
you're dealing with my ADHD. I'm just all over the place. What else can I tell you? Well, okay, I'll give you. Do you guys have Tim Hortons and Wendy's?
Yep.
And,
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the last food fact I'll give. But my grandpa was in the food biz, and he did that deal in which made Tim Hortons and Wendy's a thing. That's the fact.
Oh shit! Okay, all right, okay.
Yeah.
So we can say that when the next time we're at a Tim Hortons.
We're 1
Wendy's.
degree separation.
Yeah.
From the that's
You know, we know the guy
okay.
whose grandfather set this whole shit up.
Last one actually. Now that I'm talking about him, he also worked with Colonel Sanders, and it didn't faze me at the time, but he had all these photos with the Colonel Sanders, and now I think that's super cool, but at the time I was like, yeah, whatever. But yeah,
that's crazy.
I'm starting to think Keegan's grandpa was Forrest Gump.
That's not Yum Foods, is it?
No.
I think okay.
No.
Who's Yum? Yum Foods might be Taco Bell, KFC, Pizza Hut. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of different.
I had no idea I'd be talking about this. This is crazy.
That's all good. I mean, it's okay as long as no one's offended, right? We've helped people out, though,
I
right?
think that's
I thought we were gonna get into I did think at some point we're gonna start going through our Donnie's drive-through orders, Junior Chicken add pickles, blah blah blah. You have any fast food hacks?
No, because I kind of avoid it.
You don't like the
That's good.
I'm telling you, boy, you
or
will. By the time you get up in age a little bit more, that stuff sits worse and worse every year.
Oh, just in general,
just
food.
in general.
Oh, okay.
Just in general.
Yeah. That's fair. We'll let you know.
There goes that elusive McDonald's deal we were gonna get.
Okay, so just before we move on to something relevant, have you tried Wendy's breakfast yet?
I have not yet. No, you? Like the Baconator breakfast? I want to.
It's fucking awesome.
Again, I'll pay
crazy.
for it for a long
It's
time.
fucking awesome.
Is it good?
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That'd be such a crazy morning to have a Baconator.
It's not a Baconator. There's no burger patty. It's a sausage patty with a bunch of bacon and a real egg, and they even have a Swiss hollandaise sauce, which I've been begging for years. The first fast food joint that puts a hollandaise sauce on their fast food breakfast sandwich is a winner in my books. Tim's tried it for 2 weeks 3 years ago. It sucked. But Wendy's coming for McDonald's head as far as I'm concerned.
Hell yeah. Wow, that's crazy.
There you go.
Hollandaise sauce at Wendy's. That's wild.
A little sus, just a little bit. So what's you've been in the studio the last couple of weeks have been crazy. You mentioned books. Is that how you decompress?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it's kind of just how honestly I spend a lot of the first quarter of my day is just trying to be in books, and then I'll usually finish writing, and then if I'm in writing season, I had a really, really crazy writing season from January till, I mean, I don't want to say it's over really at any time, but I'll usually wake up and I'll read, and then for 2 or 3 hours, and then I'll just start writing anything. Doesn't really matter what it is. And the writing process on this new record has been so different in a way than the last record, in ways that I almost don't even want to talk about it too much, because it's it's
That's
crazy
cool.
even, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't want to give, but it's very exciting. Is really the most that I'll say without giving away too much. But I love reading. It's if I didn't have reading, I'd be fucked. I don't know. It's such a good way to get lost.
Now, I'm assuming.
And,
I'm assuming I might know the answer to this, but do you ever just shut it off? Do you have it sounds like you get up in the morning and you kind of have the plan that this is writing time, but is there ever a moment where you're just not? I would think even with books, it's going to get that creative process going even more, right? So sometimes where it's just you're just not going to let an idea sneak through there.
trying to answer this question in like a way that will contextualize more, because it's such a great question. I'm trying to figure it out for myself. But the short answer is no, and the slightly long answer is, the reason why is because I made a deal with myself, like basically like 10 years ago, that like I just want to be a product of my own artifice. I just want to constantly be extracting things out of me, because I feel like I have a voice inside of me. And I ignored that voice for a little bit at a certain age, and it was torturous. And I realized the more that I embrace that source or that voice, the more I get from it, the more I learn who I am as a person. And in turn, my life just seems to get better the more songs I write, especially recently. You know, like I haven't always made a living doing music. It's, you know, but in the last like 3-4 years, I've been completely blessed to have been doing so. So I really see it as the only problem that I have is to write my next song. And if that's my only problem, then that's no problem at all. So I guess to answer your question, man, I'm honestly kind of working on how to turn it off. Like currently, I don't really know how to turn it off.
But books are a way for you. Like you said, you get lost. So are you getting lost in fiction, or are you somewhat obsessed with just like absorbing information and knowledge?
Yeah, I think even reading, there's like a slight agenda there. I do must say that I know it eventually, subconsciously, it'll somehow come out into my writing. So I you know, if I can, essentially you get like paid to read books, you know, and I see it as like a real good thing to do. And it hasn't always been that way. I haven't always, but like really in the last 3-4 years, I'll just wake up and I'll just start reading something, and it's usually philosophy, to be honest. Okay. I have a hard time. I have a hard time getting through a lot of fiction, but I do love reading fiction. It's just not nearly as much as some other subjects that I read. But like a good combination of philosophy and fiction to me is someone like William Burroughs, who wrote like a book like Naked Lunch, where it's like there's always something to be learned from that, and there's always something like wickedly humorous, and there's always something just like wickedly disgusting, and it's a good myriad of feelings and emotions. The thing with reading is that you can never read enough once you realize that you really love reading, and it's kind of this just like endless journey. But for a songwriter, I think if you're not reading, it's kind of like a hockey player showing up to the arena without any skates. It's like, where are your skates? Do you know what I mean? You gotta, in theory, you have a stick, but like, how are you can get around so much quicker with skates. And I feel like reading really sharpens up a songwriter's, I don't want to say prolificacy, but it's not like regular fuel when you go to the pump, you know. It's like, and it's not diesel either. It's like some kind of other fuel that I think you should just be having as a songwriter. Because if you're always writing about your own self, me, that's kind of boring. That's kind of boring in my opinion. And it's exhausting too.
Have you gotten majorly into that era of beatnik writing?
I do love a lot of those. I mean, it depends what you quantify as majorly, but like I do love that era of
like Kerouac and
love it. Yeah, I love it. Kerouac and Ginsberg and Burroughs and Aldous Huxley and all those people, and even tons of poets too, like Dorothy Parker and Frank O'Hara, and I just finished. I mean, like as plain as it sounds, I love someone like Emily Dickinson. Like she was so ahead of her time when you read her lyrics, and just like the meter of her words and whatnot. And obviously then when you discover someone like Dylan, you realize like, oh wow, this guy is just, he could have been an author. Yeah. He, you know what I mean? Like he probably should have been, but like obviously he shouldn't have been, but like he did the right thing, but he very well could have been, and he just so happened to know a couple chords. And that's a beautiful vehicle for words is music. And I guess in the last 2 years I've realized my own skill set in that, and that's kind of the record that I'm alluding to, this second record, but it's not finished and it's not done. I'm just so deep in the well with it. All the songs on Previous Pain, the first record that I put out a couple of weeks ago, all those songs, I think the last song I wrote for that was probably 20. Well, actually, I wrote World Awake in June of 2021.
Okay.
So that was the last song. That was the last song I wrote for that. And I remember when we recorded World Awake, in my mind, I was like, this is the first session for the second album in my mind. And it changed. It ended up being a Previous Pain song because it just fit more thematically. Yeah.
Well, I'm very excited to hear the next record. I mean, I'm glad I still have time to sit on this one.
Yeah.
That's nice.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And there's more stuff coming out too that,
right.
That at the time I would have been surprised that this particular song was left off of the record. So I'm really excited for it to come out at the end of August.
The Wilder card?
How'd you guess it?
The one thing we didn't talk about throughout, what's the touring plan? Is there?
The touring plan's going to happen. It's kind of, it's not, I don't want to say it's up in the air. We were up for I think I was talking to you, Patrick, slightly about it. We were up for this huge tour.
Yes, you were, yeah.
In the summer. We're not doing that tour, but we'll be on. We just kind of found out recently that that's not happening. So we're just kind of bouncing back and we're figuring stuff out, but it's all an in-house operation.
Yeah.
So it's there's no, it's not any detriment at all, but it's we do it all ourselves. So we'll be doing a Toronto headliner sometime in September.
Cool.
And then with the Darling Congress, this other band I'm a part of, we'll be doing a bunch of shows in August.
Yeah, I actually just found out that I will be in town for August 25th at the Horseshoe, so I'm very, very excited about that. Which
there you go, man.
Is really going to be special for me because 7 years ago, my partner and I flew out to Toronto and hung out with a bunch of friends at the Horseshoe to see the final TK show.
That's awesome.
And we're going to do something similar on August 25th, so it's kind of cool.
That's
pretty
awesome.
Sweet. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's wicked. Well, I'll see you there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's gonna be a good time.
And we'll be in Red Deer soon. I just don't know exactly when, but we will be there.
We'll welcome you. You're welcome.
Whenever it happens, we're there.
Hang out at Bose. It's a pretty sick venue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Thanks for hanging out, dude. Again, Previous Pain is sick, and congrats, and looking forward to hearing the Wilder card in a couple months.
Thanks for letting us pick your brain on all the creative stuff. Hopefully the process isn't too angry at you and still barking away to shut up about it.
Anytime, guys.
All right. Thanks a lot, dude.
You do. Thanks, Keegan.
Okay, see you guys.
Peace. So a couple weeks ago, I was here, and it was raining a lot in Red Deer. Actually, it wasn't even last week; it was the week before. And there was some of these tiles were looking a little heavy, little heavy from the rain.
And was there?
Yeah, there was a little water.
My daughter, we found out the hard way that her sunroof was leaking in her car.
Oh shit!
And then we had water in our basement on Friday.
Oh damn it! That sucks. Bad?
It wasn't too bad. I can't.
Carpet?
No carpet,
okay.
thankfully, and it was just limited to the laundry room.
Oh, okay.
So I got a panicked call from my wife.
Yeah.
That the sump hole was over everything. So I'm like, "What? Did you plug the sump in?"
Man, last Thursday, Riley and I got in my car and drove down to Calgary.
Right.
For 2 sets. We actually saw Zune. We saw Dan Monkman, who was on a previous episode of The Road to the Stage at the King Eddie, and then we went and saw Built to Spill at the Palace, which was fucking crazy. But we left Red Deer in insane torrential downpour rain. It was fucking crazy. His street at one point looked like the whole street.
It was the mall here in town flooded.
Oh, right. I do remember seeing that. We got to, what, was it Olds or Innisfail, Riley? And it was just gone. Nice weather.
Yeah.
Just the hurricane above Central
It's this
Alberta.
little shit valley that this city is in. That just,
But yeah, so we got lucky. We got to see those shows, and then, fuck. It's been busy.
I got to see Garth Brooks.
Yes. So how was it? Did he play for 3 hours?
No.
How long did he play for?
2.5 maybe. It wasn't.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Damn it! I want to. Well, there was curfew time left, which is what choked me a little
that's
bit.
Okay.
I think the show finished at probably 10:45 ish.
So 15 minutes.
And he had
left.
made a note early on in the performance about how he wasn't going to talk too much because there was a curfew.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, good. Well, that means he's going to walk right up to the curfew. And then I'm like, dude, you got 15 minutes.
Did he talk a lot?
Find more songs. He's Garth.
It's such a wild show where, like, and I think it was kind of a similar stage setup to the last time he was in Alberta. Am I mistaken?
It's
like he's right in the middle and just
yeah.
surrounded by what looks like 3 million people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was wild.
It's not an overly exciting stage setup. I mean, I guess most country
just
shows
a circle, right?
aren't, just a circle.
Yeah.
And then he does have one. He always makes some sort of appearance out of the stage. So he had 2 drummers, and they're on this riser that it starts lifting up on wires, and then it looks like he's lifting the drum riser up and then pops out. But that's the only time they use that. I'm like, well, that's kind of a cool.
What's the point?
Yeah. Just to use it once.
Huh,
but
interesting.
anyways, the one thing I will say about that show, like them, love them, hate them, your music, not your music, every single person there was having the time of their lives.
Right.
Like singing along to every song, hugs, arm in arm. He does a lot of stuff where he's pointing out signs in the crowd.
Yeah.
Tons of cancer survivors that have credited his music for helping them get through times. And he would sing. So there's one couple that held up a sign that they had beaten cancer thanks to his music, and he sang a song. He did actually change up the set list, played a song that I haven't seen on any other set list, focused on them, sang it right to them. So, I mean, there's a reason why he is.
He seems like a good humanitarian in the music industry. It's interesting hearing about that show and like his 2.5-hour sets, and like the fact that sometimes when he tours, I don't know if it was the case this time, he has to do 2 shows in a day over the period of like a week because people are going fucking full bananas to see him. And so many people are. But can you name other artists that are in the same status as he is in terms of getting that many people out for that long?
I've asked that question to so many people. Name any other artist that could step in and put 120,000 butts in seats 2 nights at Commonwealth, and I don't know that you can. Like, honestly,
okay, but what if you ignore the actual region, like Vancouver, Toronto?
I still don't know.
Dave Matthews Band, easy.
Would do BC Place 2 shows?
He'll do 1 show.
1 show.
Yeah, in Canada, the States.
Yeah,
a
but like,
story.
Could he sell out back-to-back nights at BC
yeah,
Place?
I think so. I think so. Yeah, I think so. I'd have to look at the actual sellout numbers, but like my buddy saw him last week in Toronto, and I think he said it was like 15th or 12th time seeing him. Yeah, it's
how many people show up for like those Dead shows?
Oh yeah, that's a good point. The Dead's probably a good
Fish,
example too. Fish is a really good example, but again,
that's
Fish
a
is
dedicated,
very niche, and I think
yeah.
Dave Matthews Band fans are very niche as well. Not as much as Fish or whatever this Dead and Company is, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. PJ and Foo Fighters are probably in a similar vein, right?
Would Taylor Swift get into that conversation? Like any of
does
those,
she ever play
or like
concerts? Does she ever tour?
I used to.
I don't know. I don't pay attention.
Like, what about some of those, like those pop artists that are selling or whatever streaming?
Adele?
Like Adele. Could Adele do it? I don't know. I still think Garth's a rarity.
Yep. Definitely
there's
rarity.
not many that can do what he does.
Oh, I'm sure any year he tours, he's at least in the top 5 or 10 of best-selling tours of the year, right?
However, like if you're going by profits, though, because he keeps those ticket prices down.
Oh,
Again,
that's
you think
that was
of
my
like,
next question. How much were your tickets?
You think of that like the Def Leppard Motley Crue Stadium tour, which is I think $400 a ticket for some of those, or $225.
Shameless.
Yeah, it was $100.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he does seems like a pretty appropriate. I don't know, goodwill-to dude to do that stuff.
And if it's an act, the guy knows what he's doing and he sells it well. So,
all right, here's the deal. That was Keegan Powell. His record, Previous Pain, is really, really good.
Really good.
He works with a bunch of musicians that we've had on the road, the stage, and it's really been great to see this constantly evolving vein of musicians.
Again, it's community.
That just like, I think back to Chastity and all those musicians that he has in his band that are all involved in different projects, and Pete's project with Darling Congress, and we've been lucky to talk to a number of people that have just further opened our scope of talent in this country.
And I'm,
cool.
Super thankful that we got into the weeds a little bit about the process, even though I think a couple of times he had mentioned about it, the process maybe barking back at him to not talk about it, or, we
Very
talked about too
dude.
how, just the casual music listener doesn't really care about that process. But after listening to him, I don't know how you couldn't care, because it's Like, it's just, to me, so fascinating how the creative mind works, and
Yeah.
just to get a little glimpse of it.
And listening to previous Pain, I don't know how the fuck he writes most of those songs. So
Yeah.
it's I'm at least a bit closer to figuring it out. A bit closer. I can smell it. And we got some good food hacks. So Tim Hortons grilled bagel special.
And you're going to go see the Elvis movie?
I don't know.
Do you like Baz Luhrmann? And
Yeah, he's all
Okay,
right.
okay,
Whatever.
yeah.
I don't know. I wasn't like gaga for Moulin Rouge.
Yeah.
But yeah, it looks all right. I mean, I don't know. Do I want to watch Tom? I like Tom Hanks, so I want to watch him playing an old dude with a really shitty German accent. I don't know if I
And
do.
that's all I've heard so far is it's more Hanks than anything
Yeah,
else.
I don't know if I do. But anyways, it is what it is. I'm sure I'll watch it eventually.
Well, fortunately, we'll keep you pretty busy here because we're going to crank out some episodes over the next little while.
Bang, boom. Fucking sick guests coming up.
It's pretty awesome. Big thanks to Sawback Brewing Company,
Ryan Riley, Communal Creative Studios.
Go Services Inc.,
Okay.
Bose Barn Stage.
And?
Did we lose Cooley?
Hey,
Is he
this is
gone
Peter
now?
Michaels, by the way.
Oh, and Patrick Bateman.
Hey, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Yeah.
do it, or
do
he
it.
will come and grab your phone and do it for you.
Yeah, and Pete's doing it too.
I got one in. I did one.
Yeah, you did.
Pretty proud.
It's very good. All right.
Next episode is
Wednesday.
The Road the Stage is produced by Ryan Cooley and Riley Sur Yin at the Communal Creative Studios in Red Deer, Alberta. In partnership with Go Services Inc., Sawback Brewing Co., Tourism Red Deer, and Bose Bar and Stage.